Hello. All right. So I'm going to talk about beliefs and how beliefs can either create a company that is poised for growth or cause it to die. I'm going to talk about what's happened over the last 5 years at GoDaddy, what we've done, how we've changed the company dramatically. But I'm going to kind of take it in a different way and kind of spin it. Let me just start with this. You know, you learn a lot about somebody on a golf course. And I know that seems like a super weird way to start a talk about transformation. When I was a little kid, when I was 11 years old, my mom, who was very great mom, but she knew that I was a hyperactive kid and was trying to figure out how to take care of me. And so in the summertime, she would drive me to a golf course at about 7 a.m. in the morning with a sack lunch. And she'd come back at night and pick me up at around 4 or 5 p.m. I was super hyperactive. All I wanted to do was walk around for, 6, 7 hours. So during that time, after getting dropped off with my sack lunch and my tennis shoes and my golf clubs, I would walk around that golf course and I would meet grown-ups like you as an 11-year-old kid, grown-ups. And I would play with people all day long. And what I found out about people on a golf course blew my mind. I found out if they were honest. Did they cheat? Were they kind to themselves? Were they kind to others? Did they actually have higher expectations of themselves than they should have? Were they a good person? You could actually tell all this about somebody in 4 hours when you're walking around with them because they have the ability to cheat, they have the ability to lie, they have the ability to be really nice or be total dicks. You learn a lot. Okay, now, why would I actually preface this talk about that? All right. So fast forward, 11 years old, let's just move up about, 45 years, and now I'm actually had a pretty reasonable career, been at Microsoft for a long time, was at Xerox for a long time, was at Yahoo for quite a while, was a Compaq Computer, was a technology guy for almost 30 years. And I got a call from a Heidrick & Struggles recruiter who said, hey, what do you know about GoDaddy? And I was about to pull the trigger on another CEO gig in the Valley, Silicon Valley. He said, what do you know about GoDaddy? I go, well, look, I've been a customer for 5 years. I have like 50 domains that I own under management. And I know that they're really good at that. The software is not great other than that. Their commercials are so wacky, I don't even know what to make of them. They're super misogynistic. I don't get it. So, but, why do you ask? He goes, well, because they're looking for a CEO. I said, well, I'm a product guy. I don't know why they would want a product guy. And he said, well, look, the company was just purchased by 3 private equity companies, Silver Lake, KKR, and TCV, Technology Crossover Ventures. And they think that there's a product job here for a CEO. So I said, well, send me whatever you got. And he sent me a PowerPoint deck, and my mind blew open. What happened as I read this deck, and I thought, geez, it's a domains company. What is it, $200 million in revenue? I start pouring through this document. It's a $1 billion company. It's got massive gross margins. It's got 85% customer retention, 80% brand awareness in the United States. Huge customer loyalty, an NPS score in the mid-60s. It had so much going for it that I was like, this is not possible. I thought this place was everything I see in these commercials. Turns out, it was all of that. And I said, look, I'm willing to talk to folks. This is really interesting. And they've done all of this in the United States. They never left the country. So I started talking with the board. I talked to a couple board members at KKR. I talked to a board member at Silver Lake. I talked to a gentleman at TCV. I talked to 2 incredible operating executives that were inside the company that knew what was happening inside. And when I started talking to them and asking them what was happening in the company, what's actually going on, every belief that I had what was there was confirmed. And I thought, holy shit, this could be an amazing opportunity to go grow something from, it almost made $1 billion a year, very close to something I think could be, almost $3 billion in 5 years. This is 5 years ago. I said, now, I don't know what the next step is, but like after having those conversations, I'm like, okay, let's go do the next thing. And they said, okay, the next thing you have to do is you have to meet with Bob Parsons, who's the founder of GoDaddy. He's the guy who did all those advertising. He's the guy that never took a dime of venture capital, with all due respect to the previous speaker, never took a dime of venture capital and grew a $1 billion business as an LLC. $1 billion business. And he did it his very own way. Super unique guy. So what did I say I wanted to do to get to meet the guy? I played golf. So I said, look, I don't know if I'm going to take the job. I don't know if the guy's going to like me, but I'm going to play golf with him. I'm going to spend 5 hours with him on a golf course, and I'm going to find all the things I knew as an 11-year-old boy. So I spent 5 hours with Bob on a golf course, walking around with him, watching whether he cheated, whether he thought too highly of himself, whether he was kind to his caddy, whether people walked up to him delighted to give him a big hug and go, how are you doing, man? And like, let me just hang out with you. And did he take himself too seriously? Was he joking about how bad his golf game was? And so, at the end of that 5 hours of spending time with Bob, I learned how he put together an amazing business, how he shocked and awed during Super Bowl commercials that he knew were totally different than what anybody else in tech would have done, but he did it, and he knocked the living hell out of it. He said, man, when I did that whole Super Bowl thing, he goes, I know 2 things about the Super Bowl. Number 1, it's mostly guys watching it. Number 2, they're mostly drunk. And what do I know that guys like to watch when they're mostly drunk? I'm going to go put, a scantily clad woman in this commercial. It's going to be really funny. It's going to take advantage of the previous Super Bowl where Janet Jackson lost her strap during the performance. I'm going to go make fun of that, and it's going to go crazy. Within 6 weeks, okay, here's what happened. They ran the ad. So many people complained. He had another spot in the last half of the Super Bowl. They pulled the ad from the Super Bowl and said, Bob, we're not going to run that ad. It's too offensive. So we're going to comp you on the first ad. So Bob ran a Super Bowl ad. He didn't pay for it. They comped him. And because they pulled the ad, the entire news sphere was buzzing about, oh my God, a Super Bowl ad that was so gnarly that they pulled it the second half. And he was on the news for the following 6 weeks about what happened. Market share went up by 20% in those 6 weeks, started just making cash, and he was off to the races. That is a brilliant marketer. And the insight that he had, and meeting him on that golf course and having a discussion with him about what I was going to do with the company, which is going to be very different than what he did, was a very interesting conversation, and I'll walk you through some of what we went through in that transformation. Okay. This gentleman, James Burns, I know he looks like a character from Lord of the Rings or, I don't know, maybe Game of Thrones. He's actually an amazing presidential documentarian. He is a guy who has done a lot. He's a Pulitzer Prize winner. He's done a lot about leadership. He posits there's 2 kinds of leaders. There's transactional leaders and transformational leaders. Transactional leaders try to make sure that they're working within the culture, that they're creating processes and systems that allow you to get things done, but they're not actually transforming the company culturally at the very root of what gets done. Now, that's a super important thing to know. I am not a transactional leader. I tend to be more of a transformational leader. And there's 2 things that you can actually focus on when you are transforming a company. You actually have to focus on both. And I posit that both of those things are incredibly important and happen simultaneously. You don't have to knock them out at the same time. One is business transformation, and one is cultural transformation. And I'm going to talk about both of those things and how you actually knock it out. Now, both of these things actually take what I'll call a vision hypothesis. And a vision hypothesis is where you actually establish what you think your business is going to be in 10, 15 years. When I played golf with Bob, I said, this is what I think this business looks like in 10 years. I think 70% of the revenue is coming from outside of the company. I think you're in 100 languages, bunch of different currencies, bunch of different payment types. You have a platform that is scalable, that's OpenStack, that's distributed throughout public cloud and data centers, and your brand actually starts to square with who your users are and what they do. And so what I started to do was actually not just test it with Bob, who was like, okay, well, it's different than what I would do, but that's why we're hiring you. And I started actually talking to people I knew in the industry. People from Microsoft, people from Google, people from Yahoo, people from all over the tech industry in the Valley, and asking them, this is what I think this could be. Am I out of my mind? Because, honestly, if they're not seeing what I'm seeing, then I've got a problem. And the vision doesn't hold. The hypothesis is wrong. But I had enough affirmation from folks that said, okay, I actually believe in that vision. And I'm asking guys that are much smarter than me, much smarter and much more experienced, and saying, I think this could be a global platform for tiny businesses that scales globally, and we can turn this into something that's bigger than life, where we take somebody who has an idea and we turn it into something that's a real business, and whether they want to make money and become big or they just want Fridays off, we can do that. What do you think? And I had enough people that said, I think that could make sense. Let's go knock that out. So while I was testing that vision hypothesis, I was actually also recruiting people to see if they thought that idea was powerful enough that they would join. Now, those are people that actually validated the reason that I was even going to go to the company. And I started talking to them before I accepted. And I started selling them simultaneously. I took the role. We announced the role. It was 5 years ago next month. And trying to get that slide. Then I started digging in deep. And really weird thing. So I joined the company. I started talking to people inside the company, doing the same vision hypothesis, testing it, and started asking people what they like about their company. What don't they like about the company? And the most important thing you can do as a leader, I think, when you're entering a new job is make it very safe for employees to give you wide open, honest feedback about whether they think what's happening in the company is good or bad. So I would ask them, what do you think's happening here? What do you like? What don't you like? And if I started sensing that they weren't listening and they weren't going to be actually candid with me and tell me what they thought was busted, I was going to start assailing things. So we had a couple, frankly, everybody, think back 5 years, everybody in the company had a time card. Everybody. I remember on a Friday afternoon, I'm about ready to fly home. I was living in California and working in Arizona, and the chief financial officer of the company, it's a billion-dollar company, comes into my office and says, dude, you haven't signed my time card. I'm like, you're the chief financial officer of this company. You don't need a time card. Like, how many hours a week do you work? He goes, well, I don't know, 80, 60, 80, I don't know. It depends, whatever's happening. Sometimes not that much, but I go well, why the hell are you signing a time card for? He goes, well, everybody signs a time card. You just don't know if you can trust people to do the right thing and be honest. I go, well, are you honest? He goes, yeah, I'm honest. Well, why are you signing a time card? Because that's what we do. So I started actually assailing what the company was doing in a couple places to see if other people in the company would start open fire on some of the things that existed that they didn't like. And I'll say this. So if you think about culture for a minute in a company, it's like this little pyramid of crystal that people put on top of a table. Imagine there's a drape around the table. They go like, our culture's awesome. Look at this beautiful culture. We fight hard. We work together. We get all these amazing things done. It's fantastic. They point to this thing. And then you go like, well, okay, is there anything you don't like? And then you start assailing, and then you pick up that little skirt that's around the table, and it turns out that pyramid goes all the way to the ground, and there's so much stuff that people don't like about their company that they won't tell you unless you make it safe. So I made it safe, and we just started eliminating all these different cultural things that were happening in the company, some of which were things like doing the advertising that actually showed women in an unfavorable light. And they said, you know, it makes me uncomfortable. I don't like doing that. So we started making a big flip in our advertising to show women the same way I talked to Bob about it. Said, like, you know, look, we're going to show people as, you know, working hard. This is what they do. This is how they get it done. This is what we do for them. And by the way, we're going to show women as, and by the way, 58% of small business around the world are run by women. Shouldn't we show them as small businesses and not as objects? And so we flipped the advertising really hard. And that was really kind of the easy part. Because there's a lot of other things you actually need to do culturally to make that more relevant for them. So the next step was actually going through a series of stories and talking to folks about what we wanted to get accomplished for women in tech. And I remember having an all-hands meeting inside the company. The women were very uncomfortable talking about what we had done externally. And I remember having a conversation saying, look, we don't have GoDaddy girls, which is what the industry called those commercials, was GoDaddy girls. I said, we have GoDaddy women, and you're it, and you're accountants, and you're coders, and you're engineers, and you're IT professionals. And that's how we're going to honor you. And we're going to make a ton of progress inside this company, not just from a business perspective, where we're going to flatten a platform and go global. We're actually going to change the culture and the external perception of what this company is, from advertising all the way through to what we do every day. One of the things you do when you're actually establishing that big notion of what you're going to go do over the next decade or so is producing a vision that is bigger than life, that everybody can relate to, that women, that men, that your customers, that your investors can all get their heads around and try to make something very important happen. At GoDaddy, our vision is radically shifting the global economy towards life-fulfilling independent ventures. That could be a small business, it could be a nonprofit, it could be something that somebody wants to do that has meaning for them. And so we went after this. We have actually, over the last 5 years, gone from a $1 billion company to a $2.5 billion company. We went public 2.5 years ago. We've gone from a $2 billion valuation to almost a $9 billion valuation because we honored a culture. We allowed people to actually look at what they liked, what they didn't like, made adjustments inside the company, built what we thought was a great business transformation strategy and plan, took it from the United States, took it into 60 different countries globally, where 7 of the 17 million customers we have are now from outside the US. And we did it because people believed. People believed that both cultural transformation and business transformation could happen at the same time. Now, one of the things you have to do as a CEO or a leader in any role that you have in this room is become a beacon for change. And a beacon for change means business transformation, cultural transformation, and something that has to be incredibly personal to you that you can bring the rest of your employees on a ride with. You can actually take them with you. Now, for me, and it's something that's been very important to me, ironically, joining GoDaddy, was women in technology and actually forwarding their ability to become equals with men. We all know that there's a tech issue in the Silicon Valley about equality, about salary equity, about promotion equity. And so I've actually poured myself into that as a big issue across not just our company, but in tech. Now, World Economic Forum says we're still about 170 years away from gender equality, which is true globally. In the Silicon Valley, we're a long way from it too, where we have much disparity between men and women, and in tech generally, whether you're in the Silicon Valley or you are in Europe, or you're in South America, or you're in Eastern Europe. So why did this matter to me? So I had a sister. Yes, that's about the age I was when I was being dropped off at a golf course. That's my family. The little girl in the middle was my sister. She ended up as a very well-known professor who studied the effect of the media on women's body image and self-esteem and its likelihood to create bulimia or anorexia in young women. And Lori, who was incredibly passionate about advancing the state of women in media, actually had a tragic accident when she was 9 months pregnant, and we lost her and we lost her daughter. And my pledge to her was that I would do everything I can in my power, in my career, to advance the state of women. I'm a technical guy, I'm in tech, and so that's what I focused on, and thought that I would bring the rest of the company with me. And it aligns perfectly with changing the way that we view women in our advertising, changing the way women are actually managed or treated in tech or in other companies in a way that really makes a very large and real difference. That doesn't mean that it's just me. You bring people along with you. You get real representation inside of your company. We created something called GoDaddy Women in Technology, GD-WIT. This is Gail Jacoby, the president of GD-WIT. We have about 300 members across the company that actually are trying to make tech, not just GoDaddy, but tech a better place for women and a community for women. And then you get other folks that recruit other folks and advocate on your behalf. This is Maria Klawe, the president of Harvey Mudd University, who has 50% men and 50% women graduating from her computer science program. And I want to tell you, she and Tella Whitney of the Anita Borg Foundation have done amazing things to forward women in tech. And bringing those people along on a ride and actually having them say to you, you know, I don't know if GoDaddy's a good thing to go, just GoDaddy's a bad brand for women. I don't want to be associated with it. And then telling them what you're going to get done over the course of the next 5 years. And then having them believe you and being a beacon for them too. And saying, look, if we can actually change this company, we can do that across the industry. She's been part of that, and so has a number of other women who have been advocates, and I think can actually help the industry a ton. Your job as a CEO, your job as a leader is enable belief creation. Whether it's business transformation, cultural transformation, we're trying to change the state of an entire industry so women feel valued. And so what we've done at GoDaddy is actually now become one of the top 12 companies for women in technology that the Anita Borg Foundation has ranked us, and made it from 5 years ago being an advertiser that used women, objectified women in advertising, to somebody who actually recruits, promotes, and has been in a position now where 50%, almost 50% of our new college hires for computer science are actually women, which is about 30% over the average, period, across the industry. So I posit that you can actually get this done if you believe, if you put a vision out there, if you recruit people and bring them on your trip with you, and become somebody who actually cares enough deeply and personally to make a difference while you're growing a business, while you're doing something good for a culture, while you're doing something good for the industry, and take those steps. I honestly think if you take an approach and say, like, what should the world look like? What should we be doing? Not just for small businesses, creating great little ventures is wonderful. What else can we do that aligns with that? And then taking a step in the direction of positive change. There's a kind of a controversial woman who I think says it best. We're only 8,000 people at GoDaddy. But I think if you think about what Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has, is absolutely true. And I would ask all of you to find that true north for you. Keep your foot on the accelerator when you think you've found something that really makes a difference in your industry and in your business. Be committed to it and lead. Thanks.